here has been in this situation. You're there for a gathering of people. People are just coming together for some reason. Maybe it's a family dinner or a reunion or just a gathering of old friends. But for whatever reason, the people come together. They enter into the house together. Very happy to see each other. They greet each other warmly. They go in, they settle down in the sitting room or maybe around the table. They say how good it is to have this chance to catch up with each other. Now leave that group of people there in that room. Just go out, leave them in the room together, and come back maybe 5 or 10 minutes. When you come back, what will you see? Will you see people happily chatting with each other? Well, sure, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, that's what you would have seen. But today, if you come back into that room, what will you see 9 times out of 10? You will see that every single person is taken on a cell phone or a tablet and is busily updating and posting and texting and tweeting to people who are not in the room. Busily communicating through their devices with people who are not present. Now, it's not that all conversation in the room as these people are still talking to each other. It's just that the physical, face-to-face conversations have to compete with the other conversations that are taking place online. And you know what? Most of those people are actually texting and tweeting and posting. A lot of them are actually there, they're posting, having a good time catching up with old friends. Or good to be back with the old gang. And they're so busy carrying on these online conversations and replying to what people say that some even ignore the people who are sitting right next to them. We live in a world today where electronic communication, we're texting, we're tweeting, we're emails, and all of that kind of conversation has become ever more important. And people spend most of their days, a lot of people, in that kind of conversation. And when people get together, that's what happens. People take out their devices and talk and communicate with people who are not present. If that doesn't happen, among younger people anyways, it's because people have gone out of their way to make sure it doesn't happen. There are actually groups of friends today who have entered into a contract together. They get together, say, every other week for lunch. And what they do is, as they come in and sit around the table for lunch, every person in that group is required to turn off their phone and put it in a pile in the center of the table. And their contract is that if anyone, for any reason, touches their phone, they will be fined, penalized by the group, and have to pay a fine to the group. Those are the measures that people are taking to cut themselves off from that constant internet chatter. And this is a huge change in our culture, a huge change in our society in a very short time. And I think we need to look at that. We need to focus on it a little bit and ask ourselves what that is doing to our culture, what that is doing to our society. I've long been in the habit, during my summer preaching, of trying to do something a little bit different, trying to be a little bit lighter, a little bit off the usual beaten track. And so this summer, what I decided to preach about, during the Sundays when I'm here, is I wanted to preach on the topic in 140 characters or less. And I realize that some of you will not understand what that is referring to, so I need to explain. If you take a phone, a cellular phone, and you send a text to someone, your text, your message will be limited to 140 characters. You cannot send more than that. If you need to send more information that fits in 140 characters, you have to send a second message. In the same way, if you use Twitter, which is the fastest growing electronic network in the world today, anything you post on Twitter, anything you tweet, as it's called, will also be limited to 140 characters. And the thing is that 140 characters is a very severe limitation. 140 characters. I mean, we live in a culture that over the years has produced incredible literature. People have written books and they needed hundreds of pages to get their message across. And yet today, many people are living in a world where their primary mode of communication with the world is all within that 140 character limitation. Did you know that every single day, 6 billion tweets are sent in the world? 6 billion are sent and received. Every day, 400 million tweets are sent and read many more times than that. So a lot of people are living and communicating within that limitation. What does that do to our society? So I wanted to focus in on this rapid change in our society, especially in this area of communication, and think and talk about what that really means for us. And I wanted to start today by focusing in on the activity that is central to all of that, and that is the activity called sharing. In particular, sharing information, sharing personal, private information. Because the backbone of all of this communication that is going on constantly, all around us, is sharing. People are sharing intimate, personal details of their life. If everyone in the world suddenly woke up tomorrow and decided that they no longer wanted to share any personal information online, companies like Facebook and Twitter and Pinterest would shut down the very next day. There's no sharing. There's no reason for these networks to exist. And the amazing thing is how willing people are to share so much. Often with people they've never met. They'll never meet people they barely know. And I think that's a huge change. Many years ago, it seems, back when I was at university doing my undergraduate study, I became involved with a campus evangelical Christian group, an organization that was based in the United States, but that was working at the University of Toronto. So I got involved with this group. And one of the activities that we did in this group on campus was something called Initiative Evangelism. And basically it worked like this. We would go up and approach someone on campus. Just go up and talk, often to a complete stranger, and strike up a conversation in which we attempted to talk about very personal and private things about faith and belief in God and relationships with Jesus Christ. And it probably will not surprise you to hear that 30 or so years ago, when I was doing that on the campus of the University of Toronto, I met with resistance. Amazingly, there were people who did not want to talk to me, as a complete stranger, about their personal thoughts and feelings and beliefs. There were people who were not particularly interested in hearing about my personal information like that. So actually, I came to the conclusion after doing that for a while that maybe that kind of initiative approach to evangelism, maybe it worked in the United States, I don't know. But it was simply not a fit with Canadian culture. I went on to other activities. But I wonder how much has changed among Canadians in the last 30 years. I mean, yes, it's still true that if you were to go up to a complete stranger on a street corner today and ask to talk to that person about personal matters of faith and belief and spirituality, you would probably meet with resistance. So there's still a hesitance in certain circumstances, in certain situations, and yet at the same time, those very same people will turn around and share the most intimate details of their life with complete strangers on the internet. They will will read about the intimate, personal details of somebody else's life on the internet. They're interested in that. And that suggests to me that though people are somewhat hesitant and fearful in some circumstances to share personally, that somewhere deep inside, people have a deep need to share. To talk about the deep things and things close to their heart. And that for whatever reason, it seems like the internet is a safe place for people to do that, though it's probably not, really. Not any safer, anyway. And I think this is important because we, as Christians, we do have something to share. I mean, we have a message. We have a story that gives to people hope. A story that can give to people meaning in life. That can give people a reason for living, truths that are able to change someone's life for the better. We know this. That's why we're here. We know the power of the message that is in the Christian gospel. It has worked in our own lives. It is working in our own lives. And we know very well that what we are learning as Christians will benefit other people. We've always believed that. But you see, we had come to convince ourselves that people didn't want to hear it, that people didn't want us to share it with them. It was too personal, too intimate, too spiritual. People just weren't interested, so we stopped sharing it. And it's true to a certain extent that, yes, people do resist. People will resist if you come up to them and try and say to them, well, I'd like to explain to you. As I'll admit I've tried to do in the past, I'd like to explain to you in a certain number of points. A logically constructed argument, the meaning of salvation, or of some other Christian theological truth. People will resist that. That doesn't mean that there's not an opening. In the first letter to Peter, the apostle writes this: always be ready. Always be ready to offer to someone who demands a defense, who asks for an accounting of the hope that is in you, and do it with gentleness and reverence. Always be ready to offer that reason for the hope you have in you. What does that mean? You always need to be ready to present in some sort of logical four-point presentation the meaning of the Christian gospel? No, it's not what it means. In fact, I think it means kind of the opposite of that. What it means is that you need to be willing to share yourself, to open up that window into yourself with people. Say who you are. Show who you are. Because when you do that, when you show someone who you really are, they will notice that you are different. For you have a reason to hope. You would be amazed how many people in the world today do not have any reason for hope. But you do. And I know you may not have it all completely worked out, you don't have it all under control, but you do have that reason to hope. And if you show that to people, they will notice. They will want to understand why. What I think we're really seeing today is a deep hunger for authenticity. Because in the world today, people are just so busy putting up masks, putting up false images of themselves, sharing that false image of themselves with the world, because they think that that's what the world wants. That's what the world will accept. People do this online. Some people do this by sharing absolutely every detail of their life online, whatever they're doing. What they had for breakfast, their latest thought that crossed their mind, this amusing thing they saw, everything just goes out to the world. And I think the effect of that is basically it creates a fog around you. There's just so much information that nobody can possibly detect what matters to you and what doesn't. No one can really know who you are. some people, the more they share online, the less they reveal of themselves, and that's exactly how they like it. Other people go out of their way to present a false image of themselves to the world, to be acceptable to the world. Who are we to be in such a world? We are called to be authentic, to share ourselves, to share a little piece of ourselves with other people. And I'm not saying that we need to share everything, or that we have to share with everyone. But when we find those opportunities, when the occasions open up, for us to open up ourselves and share ourselves with someone in a situation where we feel a level of trust, you ought to dare to share. To share yourself, who you really are, your doubts, your hopes, your fears, everything. And when you do that, and I know it's a risky thing to do, but when you do that, people will take notice, and they will respect that, and often they will reciprocate and share something of themselves. And you'll both be richer for the experience. We live in a world where it's so easy for people to share everything. I mean, with a few strokes on a keyboard, if you keep it within 140 characters, you can share anything with the world. That's an amazing thing. And yet at the same time, with all of these communication possibilities in our world today, so many people feel isolated, alone, forgotten. I don't blame the technology. Technology is just a tool that can be used well and wisely, or that can be used poorly. It is a tool that has great potential to bridge divides and bring people together, but we need to think carefully about how we use those tools. I think, as Christians, as followers of Jesus, we need to take whatever opportunities we have before us to share. Whether it's face-to-face, whether it's online, whether it's within 140 characters. Use it well, though. I mean, if we find that our electronic communication is getting in the way, is used as a distraction to keep us from relating and conversing with the people that we love, that are in the very same room with us, we got a problem. Something messed up about that. But the goal of every piece of communication, whether face-to-face or whether within 140 characters, is not to just get a response, not an LOL response, which means laugh out loud. But to open up ourselves. Share a little bit of ourselves so that people might see us and look for that reason for the hope we have within us. When we begin to do that, when we find opportunities to do that, that's the kind of sharing that can change the world. Will you take a few moments in silence?